Hi everyone, the topic that I chose was about global warming. Mainly, this is an issue that concerns us all, so we should know what are the effects and consequences of this. Global warming is a worrisome global phenomenon because it carries consequences such as climate change, destruction of the ozone layer, greenhouse effect, and melting of the poles. This topic has occupied much of the efforts of the international scientific community to study and control it because they affirm that it jeopardizes the future of humanity and great consequences for the next generations. One of the causes of the melting of the polar ice is the greenhouse effect, because this is a natural atmospheric phenomenon that allows to maintain the temperature of the planet to retain part of the energy coming from the sun. Nevertheless, the increase in the concentration of the dioxide of carbon or of carbon dioxide from the use of fossil fuels have led to the intensification of this problem, which would bring as a great consequence the irreversible increase the level of the oceans. A scientific explanation about the greenhouse effect is that methane gas, water vapor, and carbon dioxide form as a natural layer in the Earth's atmosphere that retains some of the energy from the sun. But the use of fossil fuels and deforestation had led to increased temperatures and concentrations of CO2 along with methane, as well as other gases, such as nitrous oxide, that increase this phenomenon. The previous process gives a product that about 70% of solar energy that reach the surface of the Earth is returned to space, but that infrared radiation is retained by the greenhouse gases, which makes the Earth maintain a high temperature to meet the melting of the poles. One of the main poles, such as the Arctic, located around the North Pole between Russia, Alaska, Canada, and Greenland, among others, is beginning to suffer because of global warming. Also because during the last summer has been shrinking, generating devastating consequences both for the waves that made way to navigation routes and for the decrease and the ice that was in the place flooding during the last centuries. According to the NASA studies, they explain that since 2000 there had been strong winds which were expelling large quantities of all ice from the Arctic basin to beyond Greenland, generating with it that thin fragments of the ice located in the sea, and these they melt more quickly. The biggest consequence of such a meltdown would be a gravitational flotation based on the segregation of unstable isotopes in the molten Earth center. This segregation can enrich the nuclear field to the point of creating conditions for a chain reaction and a huge atomic explosion. There is also talk of the accelerated pace with which atmospheric conditions change rapidly in different parts of the world. In some cases, regressing in the summer or simply changing the duration of the time stations in different regions of the world. High temperatures have affected humans as well as some species. In fact, scientists have said that climate change could wipe out 1 in 3 species of animals in the future. Climate change has led to change in habitats. Prey to carnivorous animals have declined, and conflicts with humans had threatened some species. According to the International Business Times, there are some of the animals that have been seriously affected by global warming, such as sea turtles, are already under threat due to the certain fishing practices and garbage in the oceans. But now climate change is affecting them even more. Another animal is the snow leopard. This feline has long been on the list on endangered species. Poaching is still a threat to the big cat, but so is climate change as temperatures rise and mountain ecosystems change. Another animal is the reindeer. These animals are finding it harder to find cold and showy habitats, one of the consequences of the global warming. To this is added that the reindeer are having trouble finding their food. Leaching and moss from which they feed are increasingly scarce in these areas of the Arctic. Another animal is the polar bears. One of the most emblematic victims of climate change is the polar bear. In mid-November, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature said climate change was the most serious threat to polar bear survival and predicted a 30% drop in the number of polar bears in the next 35 or to 40 years. Recent studies show that the Arctic Sea that polar bears need to hunt their prey is melting every year, which means that the survival of the polar bear is becoming increasingly difficult. And the last animal is penguins. A study by Nature said that the penguin population is expected to decline by 19% this century. Like polar bears, climate change will affect the food and habitats where they breed. And finally, in global warming, while politicians and businessmen still debate the need to reduce greenhouse gases and pride themselves on evading and accepting some responsibility, the polar oceans have warmed up more and the layers had begun to melt. In conclusion, I have a question for everyone. We will have enough imagination, intelligence, and integrity to understand the danger before the situation becomes irreversible. This is all, and thank you for listening to me.